Hi there, I'm Rebecca Weaver. I'm going to be looking at the Conics Made Easy tutorial that I have located in your course. Today I'm going to be talking about ellipses. So let's get started. Now, like circles, ellipses are some x squared and y squared, and they're both pluses, they're both positive. For the difference is they're going to be divided by some number, meaning that the x and y, I call it, they're kind of squished like an egg one way or another way. And they're going to be squished by whatever this b or a value happens to be. For this one, very similar to circles, there's no minus here, so our center is at 0, 0, and then the a and b is what's going to shift it. That's what this stuff here is about. You don't really have to know what the vertices are, but if you're drawing it, it helps to know, kind of like, to me, those are those north, south, east, west points, and then you just kind of fill in the dots for that. So let's look at an example. Let's say I have x squared over 9 plus y squared over 16. Now notice the a and b in this case, and the a and b is irrelevant. We can call the a or the b, whichever one we want to. For this one, the x is shifted, its little radius is like a 3. So if our center is at 0, 0, notice that the x is shifted back and forth by 3's. The y is shifted up and down by this denominator here, and that would be a 4. So up and down by 4. Now notice we now have our ellipse. Didn't even matter that I knew what those vertices of the ellipse were, but they kind of make it easy. In college algebra, you'll also have to know what the focus is. I left that in here because you could use this tutorial for your college algebra class, and it will help you learn how to do the focus as well. Now, for your purposes in this class, you don't have to know what the focus is, but the tutorial does go through it for you. Unless you're in college algebra. In college algebra, yes, you do need to know what the focus is. All right. So this is our case where we shift the center. Everything's going to be the same, although the vertices of this ellipse look a little strange, but just don't even worry about that. Let's just look at an example. And we have x minus 2. So you know your center is shifted at 2. So I put my x at 2 and my y at negative 3. Now what I do is I look at my x. He goes left and right by 3 because of that 9. The y goes up and down by 4 because of that 16. And now I can find those vertices of the ellipse. All right, let's put all of this together. If they're going to ask you to label the major and the minor axes, it's just whatever the longest side is. So if the longest happens to be with the x, that's the major axis. If the longer happens to be with the y, that's the major axis. And the minor axis is just the little guy, the one that was shorter. So for our example here, x is smaller, so he's the minor axis. Y, he's bigger, so he's the major axis. And notice the axis is the total length, so for the x, he goes across the 3 this way, 3 that way, so the minor axis length is 6, and the major axis length would be 8 because it's 4 either way. All right, just like with the circles, they don't always give them to you in that pretty form. Sometimes they give it to you in this big old mess of a problem. Same thing that you do with completing the square with circles, same thing that you did when you did the quadratics, that same completing the square technique. I'm going to collect all my x's and my y's together, and I'm going to move my number across to the other side. So notice the 4x and the x squared, they collect. The y squared, going to collect them over on the side kind of to themselves as well. Notice that I went ahead and factored out that 9 out of the y's because that's going to need to be gone, and move that 76 over. All right, so let's figure out what our square would be. Take half of that 4 and square it. That would be, I'll be a 4 again, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides. I look at this minus 6. I take half of that. That would be a 3. Square it, so this number needs to be a 9. Now, it's not just a 9 that I'm adding because of this multiplier on the outside. So while it kind of looks like a 9, really it's an 81 because that 9 would multiply in there, so I need to add 81 to both sides. Then rewrite it. How I rewrote it was I went ahead and divided everything through by 9 so that I could get this coefficient off of that y. And I notice now that I have a circle. His center is at 2, -3. The x either side by 3 and the y either side by 1. This means my major axis is going to be on the x and the minor axis for this one is going to be on the y. So here's a pretty little picture of it with the center at 2, -3. The x has gone back and forth by 3 and up and down by 1. And that's what we need to know for ellipses in this class. I know that the focus stuff is written on there, so for college algebra, you'll go through that focus information, but not for this particular class, unless you happen to be in college algebra. All right, have a wonderful day, and let me know if you have any questions. Just email me. Bye now.